Ooh, yeah, yeah. They say it's all right. They say it's all right. Say it's all right. Have a good time. 'Cause it's all right. Whoa, it's all right. Now we gonna move it slow.
Hello. I'm inside. You're inside. We're all inside. This is Chor Leoni Inside. I am Ēriks Ešenvalds, Artistic Director of Chor Leoni Men's Choir, and we are so glad to have you here this Wednesday evening. It's been beautiful here in Vancouver, and just excited to share a lot of really beautiful choral music with you today. We have a show that actually has a bit of a theme to it, bringing in our guest Donald Nally from The Crossing. I wanted to focus all of our music on commissioned works, on new music, and so everything you'll hear on this show today has been written in just the last few years. And I thought I would start off with a piece that Chor Leoni sang a few years ago. And this was actually my very first commission that I ever did as a choral musician. When I was beginning Cantus in Minnesota, we approached Kenneth Jennings, who's the conductor emeritus of the St. Olaf Choir, wonderful composer. And we didn't have any money, but he really liked our group. And we said, would you please write us some pieces? And he said, well, what would you like us to write on? And we thought about it. And because of concerts that we had, we said, what about 2 Dylan Thomas poems? So he said, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. And this next piece, which is a setting of Dylan Thomas's poem, And Death Shall Have No Dominion. This is Chor Leoni singing And Death Shall Have No Dominion by Dr. Kenneth Jennings.
No
And death shall have no dominion. A great message, I think, in this day. Dr. Kenneth Jennings, one of the first, I think, the first commission that I ever did in my career, and was so glad that I did. We're going to continue on talking about new music in commissioning with somebody who I think is frankly doing the best work of all of us. There are people that I call my colleagues. There are people that I look up to, but literally I think I've got a bracelet on that says, what would Donald Nally do? And he's somebody that is just a real inspiration to me. And I'm so glad to have him here. He conducts choirs at Northwestern and is the artistic director of The Crossing. And he and I are both the only two choir directors to have won the Margaret Hillis Award for two different choirs. I would like to welcome to the show Donald Nally. Hello, Donald.
Thank you, Eric. It's great to be here.
It's lovely. It's lovely to have you here. Tell us a little bit about The Crossing. That's, I think, where you're doing the predominance of your work. That's really getting out there, and I want to really focus on them this evening. What is the mission of The Crossing? What are they about?
We sing new music. We are committed to inspiring the creation of, the recording of, and the dissemination of works that we feel ask questions about the way in which choral music is written and sung and listened to, and we are committed also to responding to the world we live in. So we do a lot of social advocacy topics, the environment, wealth distribution, things like that. We really want to talk about our lives.
And the creation of this group, as I understand it, happened quite organically. You didn't really go into it with this idea of only new music and all the rest of it. Who are your singers? Where do they come from, both in the past and now? It's a professional choir, correct?
Oh yeah, it's fully professional. It's difficult to do some of the works that we do without people who are really, really experienced.
Really, really good.
Yeah. So it started as a group of friends. We all sang together in Philadelphia in a number of groups that I was conducting: church, opera, and symphonic choir. And we kind of created this unofficial chamber ensemble of the same people that sang together all the time. We really loved it. And then I moved to Wales, and a lot of them moved to other places. And we one day said we should just do a concert because we miss each other. We just really want to do that, and we want to do new music. So we did, and that turned out pretty good. And so we did another one the next season or two, and then the next season we did three. And then we've kind of went, maybe this is a thing, because we had started to commission works, and some people had to step away because they weren't living in Philadelphia anymore, or had children or whatever. And so the people that, ever since then, some people have had to drift away, and others have come and taken their places. And we now have a group of people from Chicago that we're mainly in Philadelphia. The vast majority of people come from the greater Philadelphia, South Jersey, North Delaware area. But there's a group of people from Chicago who have worked with me at Northwestern over a number of years and done a lot of things with me that also now commute to sing with us. And there's people from other places too. But we're primarily Philadelphians.
It sounds to me that organic friendship and community aspect of how this group began is absolutely as important as its artistic mission. How do those two come together, and are they ever in conflict? How do they inform one another? How do they complement each other?
We're a very egalitarian organization. The singers have a lot of say in what we do on every level. And as a result of that, there's ownership. You can feel that ownership. And they're given ownership also by their positions on our board, and they And we have a very honest relationship. They say what's on their mind, and they disagree when when they are not certain about the direction that we're going. And so community is everything. And so who is at the table? My rule is that it has to be someone who I could get in a car with and drive across the country and be happy. And so that community is really strong, and you can feel it, you can hear it in their singing. You can see it when we have a residency in Montana every summer, and we spend like literally 14 hours a day on top of each other. And that takes a certain type of person and commitment and respect for the group, and it's awesome. They're all just really good friends.
Oh, that's just so fabulous to hear. I want to play our first piece, and it's by a composer that certainly the Chor Leoni audience knows really well, Ēriks Ešenvalds. And this piece, I want to talk about this piece, but I also want to talk about the project that it came out of. I think one of the things that's so great about The Crossing is that it's not that you're always just like commissioning a 3-minute piece. In fact, I think this would probably be an aberration for you guys. A lot of the pieces that we're going to play, but this was a part of a larger project, the Jeff Quartets. Could you contextualize this piece into that project?
So our co-founder Jeff Dinsmore, who was one of my best friends, he took up all the other sides besides the artistic side of things, although he was very talented as a graphic artist, so he did all the graphic arts for us for many years. He was a tenor in the group, and we, in April of 2014, were at Disney Hall in LA doing Louis Andriesen's De Materia with the LA Phil, and he had a heart attack and he passed away in front of us. And it was obviously a very, very traumatic experience. His partner of many years was in soprano in the group, and it really changed the course of the group. Actually, it made us step back and really consider why we exist and what the values are. And so it's had a very. I was determined that it was going to have a very positive effect. So after a while, I decided. So what are we going to do to memorialize Jeff? And so we did two things. We started a Jeff Dinsmore Memorial Fund, which is the logical thing to do. But the first project of that fund was to ask 15 composers that Jeff knew, interacted with, helped to create pieces for The Crossing, if they would write a 3 to 5 minute piece. And again, you're right, we never ask people to write anything that's short. If they would write a 3 to 5 minute piece, that would be a quartet, four voice parts that could be sung by 4, 16, 24, 48. And obviously with some way related to this topic of his passing. And they all very generously also gave us the rights to sell it as a compendium volume for 18 months to serve the Dinsmore Memorial, and then the rights reverted back to all of them. So Ēriks, who we did a lot of works with, and he'd been over and written a couple pieces for us, and Jeff knew really well. He wrote this piece. Well, what's really funny about this?
He's a cheater, isn't he?
He's a cheater. He wrote me this piece, and he said it, and said, so I know it was supposed to be 4 voices, but it's 9 plus tuned water glasses. And I'm like, okay. But we decided, fine. So it's a quartet. So it is inspired by the word quartet. It's a quartet that lies over this pad of undulating harmonies, and then these tuned water glasses are a part of it. And the text is awesome because it's not actually about death. It's about the moon. It's about art, and it's about the moon waiting to become a piece of art. It's about the moon having all the qualities that you need to write a poem. It just needs the poet. And it's an absolutely stunning idea to put into this concert.
It's fantastic. I got to meet Paul Ann Peterson, the poet, just in February. And I've just been so enamored with her writing and her take on this. And I don't know of a poem that captures how nature is just existing there, as you say, just waiting to be translated, as she says, which is what this piece is. We'll play right now. This is Translation by Ēriks Ešenvalds. I got a bit emotional there.
It's a good piece.
Yeah, I was just struck on how the moon will still be there while we're still, we're in this COVID quarantine artistically, awaiting our pen and our future translations. It's just a gorgeous work. Thank you for bringing it into the world. It's just really, really, really lovely. What is, as somebody who is commissioning so much work and is focused on new music, in your opinion, what is is there a fundamental difference between doing brand new pieces versus old chestnuts or music from dead composers? Is the process dissimilar? Is there a different level of responsibility? What's different about the two?
I don't think I approach them differently. It's a piece of music is like you learn a piece of music and you do a piece of music. But I one difference is that there's nothing to base it on. I'm sorry about the sirens. There's nothing, there's no, with historical music, you can go like, listen to somebody who was, had a lineage to Wagner, someone who didn't have a lineage to Wagner, you can use all kinds of, opinions about music. But with this, it's basically me checking in with a composer about sound and color and, the biggest thing is tempo, and just kind of letting that sound world come into the room for the first time ever. But I don't really approach it any differently. There's certain techniques of like really complex music where you have to go like, I don't know if there's a system for this yet. But again, the singers are totally committed and we figure it out together.
There is another voice in the room, though, when you're creating, and I, having talked with you for our further inside segment, you work very closely with these composers, and I would assume that there's with that other voice in the room of coaching you and trying to suss out the truth of what was written on the page, that you're able to create have different sorts of creativities and imaginations than if it's maybe just you and that Mozart score.
Yeah, I get, that's a helpful way to help me to answer that question even better, which is to say that I do treat historic music a lot the same. It's not sacred to me. It's work. And my job is to try to get to the root of what the composer is trying to say, because, scores are very inaccurate and they're really largely vague and somewhat abstract maps, and so they're not in terms of like executing something, but in terms of like what we're actually doing, which is like creating emotional context, stuff like that. That is, you really can't notate that. So I would say that I do treat the historic. It's the other way around. I treat historic music a lot the way I treat contemporary music, because I'm just trying to get at the root of what I think the composer is intending. Although I actually don't. I do very little historic music. I do a some at Northwestern and none elsewhere. So.
That's a really I think that's a really fascinating answer, and I think at least the more that I work in new music, the more I realize that as you were telling me earlier, that this is everybody has a bad day or a really good day, and these composers, the things that they go through in their own just regular lives that are just like ours, make their way into the pieces.
Yeah, it's life is complex, and it's and it doesn't matter whether you're like supposed to be divinely inspired or not.
And who determines that anyway? Really,
the kids are still screaming in the next room while you're trying to write the symphony. So,
I want to play a piece by Ted Hearne, and I'm not sure outside of more new music circles. This is a composer that a lot of this audience is going to know. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, well, he writes a lot of choral music, and I highly encourage you to get to know it. He wrote a piece for me called "Sound from the Bench," or for us called "Sound from the Bench." It was actually a co-commission with Volti in San Francisco, and it's about the Supreme Court Citizens United case, and it's an absolutely amazing 40-minute piece for 2 electric guitars, drum, and choir. But it is a knockout moving piece. And he wrote a piece for us called "Animals." Which was a co-commission between the Park Avenue Armory in New York and us. And that piece is based on 2 sentences from the current president. And so Ted and I like to work together because he's he's fundamentally, it looks like he's very interested in politics. That may be true, as am I. I want to do pieces that are, that have social relevance to us right this minute. Everything I've described is actually inspired by his fascination with what it is like for someone else to say the words of another person. What do words of the possession language that is used in marriage ceremonies? What does it feel like to say that in another voice, as in his piece "Consent"? What is it like to say the words of an South African song that was supposed to be for apartheid, and for somebody like me to sing those words, not to their tune but to another tune. And this goes on and on and on, because text is everything for us. That's what we do, right?
That's the fundamental difference of our art form, right? Yeah, absolutely.
We're storytellers from beginning to end. We need to understand what those words mean to the author. We need to understand what those words mean to the composer. So Ted and I really we come together on this certain plane about who has the voice and how are they using it. And he has a voice, and I'm fortunate enough. You have a voice, Ēriks. Your group is listened to very widely, and I'm fortunate enough that that my group has a voice, and so how that's going to be used is really important. So it's just a very, very small background. Also, Ted doesn't have any stylistic biases. So
he's exactly. You could hear a piece of his and maybe not know it's him. That's the way I feel anyway.
Yeah, and a given piece of music can wander in all kinds of styles and genres. Whether it sounds like a rock piece or a so-called jazz piece or a so-called gospel piece or whatever. And I feel really fortunate that we're living in this time when those stylistic walls are really, really being torn down by people like Ted, Caroline Shaw, and etc. The performer composer, because he's also a performer composer and he does sing his own stuff sometimes. So that's a little bit of background on Ted. He and I are actually in the middle of working on a huge project about food sovereignty and farming, industrial farming and local farming, and that we're developing to be an outside piece a few years from now. So we do a lot together.
I can't wait to hear it. I want to play What It Might Say, and this also comes from the Jeff Quartet's series, and this is a very sort of there's a lot of vocal jazz sort of going out in the writing of this piece. It's utterly gorgeous, but I think it maybe deserves a bit of explanation as to some of those voices that you're talking about. Whose voices are you singing from in this work?
Right. So this is another Jeff Quartet, and I'm gonna just say here that one of the reasons we have 2 Jeff Quartets in a given evening is because we don't have a lot of videos. We have 20 recordings.
Yes, you do.
But video is not something that we've really gone into until very, very recently. So and
we wanted to see your beautiful faces. So yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I hate seeing myself conduct, but anyway,
I know. It's bad. I believe you.
The pieces, just typical Ted is he goes into a room and he goes all right, what am I going to write when they asked me to write this piece about, this guy has passed away and he's 42 years old, and he finds this essay by a child psychologist, Dr. Winnicott, and in the essay, he's trying to describe the process by which a baby discovers their ability to find things, use them, and lose them. And how for the adult, the ultimate complement is to be found and used. And so there is this kind of revolving situation where babies like rediscover things until they finally develop the brain power to not have to do that. You know, they kind of rediscover things and they discover their own power. And so it's, you know, it says, I found you, you belong to me. Eventually it says, I lose you, I'm sad. I think it's a really beautiful text to use in the case of someone who, like, we are still many years later trying to, like, discover what it's like to have lost him, to discover like what it's like to find him in different ways, that kind of thing. So, and I just want to talk about it a little tiny second, because you mentioned the style of the music. And one of the things that happens in the music is that each phrase ends with each of the voice parts disappearing. So there's
they trail off. They have different cutoffs, or
They do, and it's actually like a graphic depiction of what the text is talking about, as one voice just kind of is left there, and then it drops into a new phrase, and then that phrase kind of disappears again.
And it's wonderful how the harmonies change as those voices disappear as well at some of those cadential points. It's fabulous.
Ted also likes to write music that is hard to execute, like that you can hear the singers or the instrumentalists, you can hear them struggling with the difficulty in it. And so some of the lines in this, in the soprano line, they have to like go way down and then just jump way up and make it sound really smooth and relaxed and like, you know, it's just kind of radio music from the 1960s or something like that.
Yeah. And this piece, it definitely sounds relaxed, and it really shows the beautiful virtuosity. This is work by Ted Hearne, What It Might Say, The Crossing. Ted Hearne, What It Might Say, The Crossing, Donald Nally conducting. Fabulous piece. Really, really gorgeous. I'm struck by hearing the works that we've presented today, knowing a lot of the projects that you've been doing. To what degree is narrative and story important to you, both in terms of, you know, an individual movement, a work that you're doing, a concert, your season? How do you use language or how does language and story work together for you, or does that not matter at all?
That's everything. It is, you know, we're a very literary bunch. So we choose a theme for a season, and everything in the season is somehow contextualized in that and related to it. But that's a very wide net that's cast, you know. But if you
so, what would an example of a theme be? Let's say
we did diaspora a couple of years back, and everything had to do with homelessness and refugeeism as it pertains to like literal stuff, as it pertains to history, ancient things, our own time, our own country, but also even like the homeless state of our own minds, the solitude, maybe the unsolicited solitude of just being human, you know. So those all were a part of that season. So that's just one example, but and so if you go to every concert in a season, it will make sense to you. The whole will make sense, you know. And if you go to one concert in the season, that concert will make sense to you too, because it's very important to me that if it's not a concert length piece, which then solves the problem, obviously, but and we do commission a lot of those. But if we're not doing that, then I need that concert. I need that concert to make sense, so that when you leave that concert, you can say, I recognize that journey. I've been on that journey in some way or other. So this is really important to me. And then words. I mean, that's the thing we talked earlier about, like, you know, commissioning and interaction with the composers and everything. That's the thing that we talk about the most, you know, because I know our community of artists well, and I know our community of listeners and receivers well, and I know what they will respond to because I respond to it.
I want to change channels just a little bit. The Crossing has not only programmed that way, but the actual like form of the art is changed quite a bit. You've done staged works, you've done outdoor works. The big thing with I know you were involved with the big opera on the High Line with David Lang. Tell us a little bit about the adventures in form that you've done versus a choir standing on a set of risers, and what have you learned from those outings?
Well, having just shown 2 videos of
right, I'm trying to give the other side. Yeah.
Way to go, Eric. So I've been asking for a long time. The Crossing has been asking for a long time, like, what does it mean to have a choral concert in the 21st century? Because, how are we relevant? Are we relevant?
Stand in a church and sing your song. Yeah. What is that?
Stand in a church and sing your songs, right? But there is a way to do that very effectively that even helps, like, well, I won't go into all that, but I have a lot to say about how a church can actually be, the invitation to the liturgy that is a concert, right? An invitation to be in the space as the space was intended by the architect, for the choir to not interrupt the line of the space, but to be a part of the line of the space. We super title all our concerts for that very fact, so that you're not staring at a program in your lap and blah blah, but to a greater extent, really, I am asking that question. Should we be commissioning pieces that are choral staged works, choral theater? Should we be taking our art to industrial spaces because we talk about the impact of industry? How much of our art should be inside, outside? If you take a piece outside, are you just taking the concert and plopping it down in the middle? Are you just saying, like, well, we're here now. I hope everybody.
Vinia, yeah,
yeah. Or are you asking the space itself? What do you need to invite a concert to happen here, and to make it make sense, and for us to like look at this space in a different way that might remind us of things that we forgot that we knew. And so that's really a huge part of so sometimes, like, we don't bother to wear anything special, and sometimes we decide, like, well, we're gonna wear earth tones today, and sometimes we do black, and sometimes we're in churches, sometimes we're outside, and all that stuff is a part of asking those questions. In the same way that I feel that my work as a commissioner, our work as a commissioner, we really like kind of had the revelation that that part of our work is kind of journalistic. That we are not asking. We don't have any answers to any of the issues. Like, I'm a freak conductor. Like, I don't know. I don't know what, don't ask me when we're going back to work.
We're not prophets. Yeah.
I'm not an epidemiologist. So the more to the point, though, if we can report on our time through words and through singing and through the context that music makes, then I feel like, then there is relevance there. We can have relevance through that. So I see our work a lot as journalists.
Did you have like a lightning bolt moment of a project that you tried and that gave you that feeling of, we're on a path now? Were there any specific works or pieces or projects?
No, but not necessarily, but there's this piece that I keep coming back to in my brain, and it's a piece that Stratis Minakakis, he's this wonderful Greek composer who teaches at New England Conservatory. he wrote this piece for us called Crossings Cycle. Actually, he wrote this piece for us called Crossings, which it didn't have anything. It's sort of coincidental that he named it that, you know.
Right.
And it had to do with his experience of being on the Isle of Lesbos and seeing the Syrian refugees arrive and watching them have to deal with the Greek government forbid the Greek citizens from helping them. That the army and the government was interacting with them instead, and the whole thing was just like really disastrous for him emotionally, and so he wrote this piece. He wrote part of the piece, and I said, "You only got 10 minutes of like a 25-minute piece here. We have to go back and do more." So he went back and did more, and it's a really great piece called Crossing Cycle, and it involves a certain technique of singing that has to do with great folk song and microtones, and but it also involves these texts that have to do with refugeeism, and it really, you know, that piece keeps coming back to me as a very important piece in our trajectory.
Sure.
And in our story, about saying how do you write this piece and make sure, you know, and make sure like you don't say like, oh, you know, it's bad for people to have to be refugees and it's good to give them water, because everybody knows that war is bad and peace is good. That's stupid.
Yes. Where's the art in that statement? Exactly.
Yeah. And I don't need, you know, I don't need to be affirmed in that, right? So this is a great example of a piece that does not do that. It really presents it in a very particular context that makes you both totally engage and then it stays with you a long time. So somewhere in there, and a number of many, you know, there's been so many pieces. We did a huge piece about the Gulf of Mexico, the Deepwater Horizon. That was an enormous piece. We did a project called Seven Responses that had to do with the value of observing the suffering of others. I mean, I could go on and on about how we've come to the conclusion that that's kind of part of our work.
You've worked a lot with the Bang on a Can folks, and I want to play a piece by Michael Gordon. And could you set up Anonymous Man? I know about this piece. I've never heard it live in full, but give us a little bit of the context of what this work is about. I think it's quite extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. It's a full concert length piece. We started talking to Michael about making one of those, and he wanted to write a sort of biographical. Well, it's not sort of a biographical piece about the street that he lives on, and we were really excited about this because this means that we're removing the degrees of separation that you have with a lot of composers who are using texts that are ancient or whatever, and instead he's writing about his own life. And part of the point to this piece is that it's just kind of like fragments of the life of the street, and it includes like him who bought a like derelict loft there in the 70s, and has seen, of course, the whole thing changed absolutely completely. Right. But he lives inside a home on Desperosa Street, and two homeless men who live on the street outside on Desperosa Street, and the interaction of the neighborhood with those people. So it really, you know, it's I think the piece we're going to listen to On That Terrible Beautiful Morning, right?
Yes, if you could set that up for us.
Yeah. So that movement is about the morning of September 11th, because they live, you know, Desperosa Street is like not very far from Wall Street, and they, you know, it was about being on the south part of the island when the towers came down, and the experience of getting your kids up and the world changing, you know. And so what you hear is you hear a melody that is connected by glissandi, and it creates this kind of like it's for some. Well, I don't want to say what it creates because I want everybody to make their own decisions about it. But you know, we talk about that later. But it's a canon. So after the first whole verse is introduced, then you a second voice comes in, and then a third voice comes in an eighth note canon with the second voice. And then eventually the bass come in, and there's a moment when the canon actually pauses and then takes off again. And there's a reason for that, that has to do with the text. So yeah, it's kind of the centerpiece of the whole Anonymous Man, even though it's pushed a little bit farther than center in the actual evening of the piece.
Well, let's take a listen to it. This is Michael Gordon and a little excerpt of from Anonymous Man. Wonderful. Excerpt from Anonymous Man, Michael Gordon. Donald Nally, I want to thank you so much for joining us, for creating and translating and singing the songs of our time. You are an inspiration to me, and I know to lots of other people. I hope that this COVID-19 gives you a little bit of time to regroup, reassess, and I'm so excited to see what you're going to create in the future.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure, and you guys are doing amazing work out there. So it's really fun to keep up with it.
Thank you very much. We'll try to get you out here. We got one more piece that I want to play before we go tonight. This is actually one of the youngest people I've ever been a part of commissioning. Kevin Pirker was one of our finalists for our C4 choral composition competition. And this is us singing a text by Edgar Lee Masters, and this is Kevin's setting of My Light with Yours. We want to thank you all for watching this evening. We hope we can keep our light with yours forever. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you hit subscribe on that YouTube link and get all the notifications that you need so that you can follow us on upcoming weeks. We are going to be featuring our Van Man Male Choral Summit next week, and our My Voice program should be a wonderful time to spend together. Stay safe, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. They say it's all right. They say it's all right. Say it's all right. Have a good time. 'Cause it's all right. Whoa, it's all right. Now we gonna move it slow. Up when the lights are low. When you move it slow, it feels like a moan. 'Cause it's all right. Whoa, it's all right. And now listen to the beat. And kinda tap your feet. Yeah. You